Abilene has a very proud history. Is whenever we face adversity, this community has always worked together for the common good of the community. Perhaps this pandemic that we find ourselves in is one of the most challenging, but I have confidence and belief that we as a community will address the pandemic in appropriate ways because we'll do it as a community. At the very forefront of this pandemic, we talked about some things we wanted to be able to do. We didn't want to panic. We didn't want to be reactive. We didn't want to create fear, and we didn't want to overreact. Rather, we wanted you to know that we were going to be prepared, that we're going to be proactive and confident and very sober-minded. In the last few weeks, we've had significant numbers arise throughout the country as well as the state. For instance, when we look at, and we do this daily, looking at the large cities in West Texas. So those are Lubbock, Amarillo, Wichita Falls, Odessa, San Angelo, Big Spring, Midland, and Abilene. Since we started recording these numbers, there have been over 130 deaths in those aforementioned communities. Right currently, there's almost 170 that are in hospitals. And a more sobering number is over 3,400, almost 3,500 are active. Midland and Odessa by themselves represent over 1,000 active cases. So when we're looking at this, when I say we, let me clarify, because I stand before you today as not just the mayor, but part of a team. Judge Downing Bowles and I communicate via text or phone call every single day, 7 days a week. Brad Holland, who is the chief medical officer in this community, we're in constant communication with him. Robert Handa, CEO of the city, our city manager, we talk every single day. Annette Lerma, health director, the smart one in the room, keeps us educated. We are constantly engaging and talking about what we should do moving forward. And so these numbers, when they were rising all around us, and it seemed like we had a donut that Abilene was maybe insulated, well, we knew that wasn't reality. We knew that Abilene would also face those challenges. And so what do you do about that? And so we bring before you today a recommendation. Now, let me be clear when I say recommendation, because that's not a mandate. You do have some cities in West Texas, Lubbock, as well as San Angelo, that both put in place ordinances requiring masks. But I want to be sure we're clear about what we can and cannot do. Under GA 28, that's the governor's current order, a municipality nor a county can really mandate a citizen wear a mask. In fact, when I talked to Stanley Smith, who's our attorney, Lubbock's ordinance, although requiring citizens and the business community to wear a mask, has 0 fines associated with it. So they have an ordinance on the books, but there is no penalty for not following the ordinance. Often we look towards Washington, D.C., or even Austin to come up with laws and regulations that are intended to help us in situations. Cities across the country have ordinances that are intended to help us. And although they are effective sometimes, most of the time, legislation doesn't work. And so even if we could mandate wearing masks for our citizens, I would argue that it's not the best for this community. Abilene has done well because we use common sense. And so we want to talk about what we can do together for the betterment of this community to help us address this pandemic. And so in conversation with Brad Holland, so I want to communicate both Hendrick as well as Abilene Regional have communicated they're supportive of our recommendation rather than a mandate. And the recommendation is that we wear a mask. You know, I mean, that we wash our hands. I mean, that when possible, we can socially distance ourselves of all the things that we've heard and not ignorant of, but we don't want to have a city council meeting or or commissioner's court and put down an ordinance telling you what you can or cannot do. We want to actually use common sense and help us. Talking to Brad Holland, and so if we're going to engage the health community, we want to listen to them. And what they say, if we have a recommendation and we have compliance, that we believe, they believe, based on the facts, that the numbers in our hospital beds can be reduced by 80%. Well, why is that important? That reduction of 80% then reduces the number of those in the hospital. That has a correlation with those in ICU, and ultimately has a correlation with those who will die in this community. And so we think, based on the facts, on the science presented from the medical community, that we think that we can save lives. And so this is not a mandate. So if you don't have a mask, and there'll be some businesses who choose not to employ a mandate within that establishment to have a mask. It'll be some of us who are in the community that don't have a mask. And you know what? That is their right. I want to remind us all that this community, this state, and this country has significant blow, economically speaking. We find ourselves today where 15,000 of our neighbors in the 19 county area are without work. 10,000 of the 15,000 live in Abilene, Texas. So this is what we've done. We talked about being proactive. We talked about making a plan. So we engage Doug Peters from the Chamber of Commerce, who's with us today, who will take questions if need be afterwards. We have Dee Moore, representing the Black Chamber, and then Travis Ruiz, representing the Hispanic Business Council. And we asked them, hey, we're not going to have a mandate. What can we do? Immediately, they engage our membership. And my understanding is around 80% of those members say, you know what, we can support this. And we can do this. And I think, you know, the private sector can do so much better what the public sector is not designed to do. So in the marketplace, you can make a decision. You'll have some who will do things a little bit differently. And you as a citizen have an opportunity to be able to make a decision what's best for you and your family. This is very fluid. It will continue to be fluid. And I think we committed that whenever needed, we would always respond and try to communicate with you. And I want to say this, we don't do everything right. You know, if we had the benefit of operating with hindsight, we will certainly do things differently with that opportunity. But we can only operate with the data that we have. I was telling the judge, I can't think of a more challenging time to be a mayor or to be a county judge and navigate through COVID-19. It's challenging, but we don't sway away from that responsibility. We embrace the opportunity, and we want to lead and do so in a way that, you know, we have your best interest in mind. And so having said that, give us a little grace sometimes, because we're trying. I mean, we're putting in long hours, reading a whole bunch of information, conferring with the experts, and trying the best we can to help and guide this community. Judge Bowes, the Honorable Judge Bowes, has a few remarks. He'll be followed by the CEO of the city, Robert Hanna. Annette Lerma, who's our health director, will also have some remarks. And if need be, we have Stanley Smith, our city attorney. We have the private sector representation by the three entities that oversee commerce that are ready also to take questions, and we will avail ourselves of those questions. thank you. And one more thing. So there are some events planned this weekend. And so let me be clear in this regard. GA 28 says any gathering that exceeds 100 has to be approved by the mayor of that municipality. This is not a one-man show in Abilene, so I'm conferring with the judge, with Mr. Hanna and others, and so the Abilene Freedom Festival will take place on this weekend. They've done some remarkable things. Everybody that is entering the event will have a temperature check. Additionally, there will be sanitizers that will be handed out. They're asking and recommending you wear a mask, and they have masks available. You will not be barred if you don't have a mask. They also contracted with a vendor that is on the hour sanitizing the areas. And they brought portable restrooms in which there is a sink in each one. And so we're going to take these one by one, and together as a team, Judge, we're going to make it seem what's best for Taylor County, Abilene. Downing Bowles.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and appear at this news conference this morning. I just will echo everything that the mayor has said this morning, that this is an ongoing effort and it is a team effort. We do stay in contact with each other. We do visit with each other as we need to as we go through this process. The mayor makes available the numbers from the health department every day that he sends those to us in the afternoon. So at the end of the day, we have a pretty good idea about what's going on in our community. I want to talk to you this morning really in two capacities. First of them is going to be as your county judge. And then the second thing is I think I want to talk just a little common sense as a fellow citizen of this community. The mayor likened the situation that we're facing now to a donut, if you will, and we're sort of caught in the middle of the donut, in the hole, if you will. And that donut is getting larger, and the hole is starting to close up. And we know that we're getting, as time goes on, we're having more and more spread of COVID-19. But what I realized after hearing this analogy yesterday was that what's happening in our community is the filling of that hole is not it closing in, but it's spreading out. We're starting in the middle and spreading out to fill that donut to make it solid. So that's happening through community spread. It's happening in some cases by, for the most part really, our numbers show that it's happening because people are coming into contact with people who are positive. And so the testing in the community has made a tremendous impact. We're in a much better position to kind of know what's actually going on out there. So that's the first thing is about the spread of it. It's community spread. That's the big thing we're watching right now. We know that as time goes on, we are not that far away from communities that are spiking, and I mean seriously spiking. These are the main metropolitan areas in the state where most of the growth and spread of COVID-19 has already happened. We have a couple of things that happened time-wise that I think had a result or impacted this. One of them was the opening of Texas. There was a big move afoot because of the economic conditions going on and the impact COVID was having on the economics in the state to try to get things opened up and get businesses back operating and open for business once again. And there is probably a look at this now and saying maybe we were a little bit ahead of the curve on that thing. But at the same time, you do have to understand and appreciate where we were at the time and that the citizens were really tired of dealing with COVID. I'm tired of dealing with COVID. I get up every day going, am I going to have to wear a mask the rest of my life? And it very well could be. I don't know. I can't tell you at this point, but I do know we're learning stuff about COVID every day. They're working on a cure and a treatment for it. And the day and time will come, like a flu shot, that you probably will be able to get a shot to at least protect you from COVID. But COVID changes all the time. We don't really know what it's going to look like from year to year, at least at this point. So it does make it very much like the flu. So we're just going to have to adjust to that. We're resilient people, and we're going to have to adjust to that as the conditions warrant. So right now, this is what we know. The steps that we have put into place and ask you to follow as citizens work. They do work. The covering of your face and protecting you from exposing your germs to other people and them from doing the same thing to you works. That's what prevents the spread of this disease right now in the communities. That's what makes it so important for you to wear a mask. Now, I will tell you that the county has no ordinance making authority. By law in Texas, we cannot pass an ordinance that says you must wear a face mask, okay? We can pass a resolution recommending that, and we have. Our resolution that's currently in place in our disaster declaration says that we believe that personal choices are what is the answer to this. People can personally make these decisions because once we inform them, we assume that they'll make rational decisions. There are a group of people out there who don't believe this is the case. They are not going to wear a mask even if you ordered it. And that puts us in a position in government about, well, what do you do? I mean, the governor's order clearly says you can't send somebody to jail for this. You can't send them to prison for violating an ordinance. So that sort of raises the question about why in the world would you put an ordinance in place that you can't possibly enforce? You could write a ticket, but you can't go to jail for it. It's not a jailable offense. Even if you were to write a ticket, what good does that do? Because the person is simply going to go out there and continue to walk around exposing other people. So this is where the common sense aspect of this comes in. I can look at this and see that, you know what, if I wash my hands all the time and try to keep my hands clean, if I cut down my contact with people, it's all of these are positive steps that we can take that are going to help control the spread of this, and that is what the big problem is right now. So just from a common sense standpoint, if you will do the same thing, it helps make me safer and makes you safer at the same time. I will just tell you that, as the mayor did indicate, I don't believe that government intrusion into this right now, at this point in time, is the answer. That simply is, I mean, we've been down that road already, and I can tell you that didn't work out so well. So I think the public sector has its own place to deal with this, but I also think the private sector, in its operation in the private sector, can take some steps to protect its employees and continue to take steps to protect its clients and its visitors as well. And that is the proper forum right now. There is absolutely nothing that says a private company cannot put a rule in place that says you must have a mask on if you enter. And I think you're going to see more and more of that as we go forward. We're all having to deal with a very extraordinary situation, and we're doing the best we can as every day comes and every new challenge comes in. But everybody, I will tell you this, that we're resilient people. Don't forget that. And as we continue to go through this process, we will try to work alongside you, keep you informed of what's going on, and try to give you the best options we can as we go through this. Mr. Mayor, thank you again for the opportunity. I'll be available to take questions. And Mr. Hanna, go ahead and turn it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. So I've received a number of comments from citizens begging that the city close this business or that business and to mandate face masks or to take strong action against those who don't comply with CDC recommendations or guidelines, basically to exhibit what they feel is strong leadership. Strong leadership is less about doing what others want you to do and more about being true to your own compass while leading others to a common goal. In this case, our common goal is to get through this global pandemic. I don't have the legal authority to force people to wear a mask. Frankly, I don't want that authority. I don't want to live in a country where the government tells me what to wear or what to think or what to say. Moreover, that isn't the Abilene I've come to know and love. The Abilene I've come to know over the past 5 years looks out for one another. They do the right thing for what the situation calls for. And they don't mind lending a helping hand to a neighbor in distress. That's my Abilene. We work together as a community to achieve a common goal because it's the right goal for our community. We work together to build and maintain a community not only for those who enjoy it today, but for those who come for tomorrow and behind us. Slowing the spread of COVID-19 in our community should be a common goal worth pursuing. This doesn't mean we need to shutter businesses to do it, and it doesn't mean everybody needs to stay locked up in their house. What it does mean is that we need to practice good social distancing. The judge was right. These things work. We need to wash our hands often. We need to wear a mask when social distancing isn't possible. And four, and I think this is perhaps the most important thing, we need to remember to treat each other with dignity, courtesy, and respect. I encourage people to use common sense and avoid situations they don't feel comfortable being in. Finally, and I've said this 1,000 times now, if you're sick, stay home. If you can't social distance, consider wearing a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, Respect those that do. This isn't a political statement. Respect them by not standing next to them. Don't antagonize them. Don't walk near them. Give them the respect and courtesy of a buffer zone of 6 feet or more, when you can. If you're at risk or have a serious medical condition, please consider staying home. It has been one of the greatest joys in my life to lead organizations like the City of Abilene. It's something that I find professionally fulfilling and personally rewarding. And I know that recently there's been a lot of criticism about just our response because we have a spike, right? Folks, there's nothing we're doing now that's going to squash this virus. Nothing. What we can do is try to manage ourselves in a situation. It's called a global pandemic for a reason, and we're working through that. And I think this community has done very well in their response. And I appreciate tremendously the men and women who work for this community, the businesses that serve this community, and the citizens who live in this community for doing what they're doing and being responsible in their actions. Thank you very much.